All right, guys, it's 10 a.m. I almost said 5 again. It is 10 a.m. East Coast Standard Time, so I am a prompt lady, if nothing else. So
we are prompt ladies.
We're prompt ladies. So we're going to get started. Okay, thank you guys so much for being here.
Amazing.
There are already, hi Vicki, so excited that you're here. Hi Ruthie, Mom, Paul, Naomi, Jeannie, Deborah, Bess, Aura, and Eliza. Hey guys, we're glad you're here. As I said, we had 80 people sign up, so I expect that we'll get joined by more people as the morning goes on, but I want to get started because we've got a lot of material to cover. We have 4 pages of single-spaced typed notes to cover, so this is going to be a good one. Okay, today you are here for a webinar about making Aliyah with children. I am Lara Strom from the blog Kosher on a Budget.
And I'm Lara Itzhaki from Olim Advisors.
So you guys may have caught us. We did a Facebook Live about 2 months ago, yes. I think, and very well received. Hi, Danielle.
Hi, Danielle.
So it's very well received. I got a lot of great feedback from you guys, and hang on one second. I'm going to look at your question in a second, Bess. Hang on one second. So we got a lot of great feedback from you guys about the webinar in general. It was seen over 20,000 times on Facebook, which for me is like a crazy number of viral sees, shares, seen bys. And so we were talking about how it was helpful to people and what they're interested in. And we thought that maybe we would kind of try to make this a semi-regular thing. So we decided that maybe once a quarter, every other month, something like that, we'd get together and do some sort of thematic webinar about something having to do with Aliyah.
Based on your questions, right. Based on what people are asking us.
So Lara said to me, the people who are making Aliyah now, coming this summer, everybody wants to know about, what are we going to do with our kids in school and all that kind of stuff. Right. So we decided that would be the first topic, but we will keep doing this if it's of interest to you, and we'll ask you throughout, and you can always email us and tell us if there's specific topics that you want us to cover. So that's kind of what we're doing here today. In terms of this particular topic, I just want to have a disclaimer here, which is I am by no means an expert on children. Maybe partially my own children, but even that is questionable. Yeah. So I would just like to say I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a social worker. There are big issues involved in making Aliyah with your kids. There are academic issues. There are social and emotional issues. There are familial issues around that. I want to share with you today what we have seen and observed, in our own family, and raise some issues for you guys to think about and process, and maybe some strategies to help you deal with it. But I really want to underscore the fact that I'm professional. I'm not offering you professional advice. You may need professionals like Lara.
So let me explain a little bit about who I am, my background, and how we started with Olim Advisors. I was born in South Africa and made Aliyah with my family when I was 2 for the first time. We lived here for 8 years, and then we moved to the United States, where I lived for 8 years. And then I came back to Israel when I was 18, and I did a Mechina program at Hebrew University. Then I was a lone soldier for 2 years, and then I went back and got a degree in social work from Hebrew University. I married an Israeli, and after several years and 2 children, we moved to the States for 8 years. When I said, enough, I want to come back to Israel. This is where I want to be. I know that this is where I want to raise my kids. And if we wait longer, it just gets harder. That was my own personal feeling. Again, nothing applies to everyone.
We'll talk soon about the right age to bring your kids.
Right. So we came back here in 2010. We had 4 children at the time. Our oldest was 10, and he was going into 5th grade. And I felt like for me, that was important for me to get here. At that point, I still felt like it was borderline a time for us to come. So we came, and thank God, almost 8 years later, we are very, very happy. 3 years ago, one of my brothers made Aliyah, and I was not here at the time. I was in the States. My father was very ill and passed away that summer. And my husband did everything for them. He found them a home, he found them a car, he registered the kids for schools, he set up the utilities, their gas, their electricity, from A to Z. They basically got here, and the T-shirts with the emblem on the shirts, the school shirts, were waiting for them in their house.
Their uniforms.
Their uniforms, thank you. My brother, like me, lived in Israel for 8 years, so he speaks beautiful, perfect Hebrew. And a year after living here, he turned around and he said to me, how do people do this? How do they manage if they don't have Shimon, my husband, to take care of everything for them? And he can communicate easily with teachers and with anyone at the store or the gas station. And that's when we co-founded Olim Advisors. We really felt that there was a need. We sat down with Nefesh B'Nefesh and we asked them what's needed. What do Olim still need? And the answer is a lot. The answer is a lot. The answer is personal hand-holding guidance on anything from A to Z, from pre-Aliyah to post-Aliyah, and specifics of going with Olim to the bank, going with them to Mishlad Klita, helping them with Mishlad Plim, going to
the Ministry of Absorption and the Ministry of Interior. And these are all bureaucratic offices that once you get here as an Ola or an Ola, you have to do a lot of bureaucracy, box checking.
Exactly. So when you get here, it's kind of like you just hit the road running. You don't stop for the first 2 weeks all over the place. We help people we help them set up their internet. We really get their life started here. And that was the idea behind Olim Advisors. We go into the schools with the different children and speak to the teachers. We advocate for them, explain to the teachers if there's special needs that the kids may have. And we just, I think, really give a feeling of whole support. We are the go-to for any question. Like you said last time, nobody wants to call their neighbor or their family or their 20,000 times a day, but they do that with us. They call us, they text us, they email us, because that's what we do. And we have amazing relationships with all of our clients. We know them very well. We know their families. And I think, Baruch Hashem, we really help their Aliyah and their Klita, especially in the beginning, to make it that much easier.
So I think at the beginning, from what I understand about Olim Advisors, they were really focused on more of sort of the nuts and bolts bureaucratic stuff. And over the first year and a half of their business, they saw that one area that families, especially with children, needed help was helping with their kids, helping with the schools, and setting realistic expectations for their kids to help their kids adjust to life in Israel. Because obviously, as parents, we want our kids to be successful here.
And happy.
Successful and happy. I consider, those two to be one and the same. But
right.
Yes.
Right.
They're not, I don't mean successful like, world famous successful. I mean, they want their Aliyah to work. They want their kids to feel connected, to feel settled, to feel centered, to feel happy.
Right.
So that was an area that they started working more and more in terms of working with the schools. And we'll talk about that later, but I also thought that it was an area where we could really sort of bring out some of the issues. So that is what we want to do today. I just want to very quickly answer one question that's already come up, and then I'm going to show you briefly what we're going to talk about, the difference of what we're going to cover today, and then we'll get into it. Okay, so the question that already came up is one of the participants, one of the attendees wants to know if there's a difference between what we're going to say, and I'm imagining in general, the experience of those who need Aliyah and those who are returning citizens, those who have lived here at some point in their lives, left, and have come back. So actually, both Lara and I are that category of people. We're Toshavim Chozrim, we're returning citizens. As I said, when we did our Facebook Live, husband and I both made Aliyah separately, met here, got married here, our first 2 children married here. 10 years ago, we moved back to the States with 2 kids. We had 1 more child there, and then we moved back here 9 years later. So we've been in Israel now for 9 months. So even though my husband and I are not technically Olim, we are Toshavim Chozrim, I have noticed that our children, regardless of their legal status, have the emotional and academic and social issues of being Olim. They are basically Olim for all intents and purposes. We're not going to get really nitty-gritty into laws and things like that. There are some differences. If you want to know what those are, then you can contact Lara directly. But you can't hear me. That is not good. Okay, can you raise your hand if you can't hear me? Oh, let's see here. Can everybody hear me? Let's see here. Message. I can hear you now. Yes, 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 yes. Okay.
Okay.
I how much you couldn't hear. Thank you for letting me know that you couldn't hear. Sorry about that. But basically what I'm saying is there are some differences in terms of the laws regarding your rights as an immigrant.
The process is what you had here, like which offices you would go to first, and that really depends on your status.
But that Lara can help you with, you know, in a one-on-one level. In terms of what we're going to discuss today, it doesn't matter sort of what your legal status is. This is about people who are moving here with children at various ages and stages and sort of what they go through.
Right.
So I want to, hang on a second, I'm just going to share my screen here with you. Okay. All right, so I want to go through what we are going to be covering today. What's on the agenda for today, so you know what to expect. So first of all, the introductions, we've already done that. And then we're going to talk, the first section is about your children's social and emotional welfare, their well-being. And these are some of the questions that we want to address. First of all, what's great about living in Israel for Olim kids? What is challenging about living in Israel for Olim kids? What is challenging about living in Israel for Olim parents? What is the best age for children to Aliyah stage? We're going to discuss that question. How do you talk to your kids about the process of making Aliyah? How do you tell them that you've decided to do this? Do you involve them in the process? How do you talk to your kids about Aliyah? And lastly, which is better? Community with more English speakers or with fewer English speakers? So we're going to address all of these issues. And in the second half, we're going to talk more about academics and school. What are the differences between Israeli and American schools? We're going to tell you everything you need to know about school in Israel. No one else is going to tell you. How do you prepare your children and yourself for school and Gan in Israel? What are appropriate academic goals for your child or your children in the first year of school, especially school age? Obviously, if they're in preschool, then there's probably no appropriate academic goals. How do you register your kids for school in Israel? We're going to talk about special education in Israel, early education in Israel, high school in Israel if you're coming with older children, and also after school. We have a full packed agenda, and we are going to get started right now. We've already done introductions. Let's go into what is great about Israel for Olim kids. Okay, so hold on. I'm going to take it off and bright again. Okay, so I made a list of 10 things that I think are great about Israel for Olim kids, and Lara will chime in with hers as well, because she has been in a lot as a child, and she has been a parent to Olim. Visit from all aspects. So the first thing on my list, the first thing that I think most people think of when they think of Israel and kids here, is that kids here are tremendously independent, far more so than the kids in the United States, in my experience. I told Lara when we were talking about what we're going to put on here that I went to a park in Modi'in, and there was a sign up at the park that said children under the age of 6 may not be in the park unattended. And I thought, wait a minute, so that means that children over the age of 6 are in the park unattended, which is, you know, kind of crazy to me, right? Like that a 6-year-old.
Like you see the little kids going on the buses by themselves.
Correct.
All the time.
Including like not just, you know, buses for school buses, like
public buses. Public buses.
Yes, when they're like 8, 9 years old.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they're far more independent here.
Absolutely.
You know, as a parent who's used to sort of parenting in America and parenting with that mindset, that can be a little challenging as a parent at the beginning, because
it's shocking. It's shocking.
You're not used to that, but I think it's a good thing, and I think that leads into the next thing, which I like about, which I think is a passion for Olim kids in Israel, which is that I find that kids here have a lot more ingenuity and they're more nimble. They're better able to problem solve. They're less likely to turn to their parents to solve all their issues. Israeli parents tend not to be helicopter parents, and Israeli kids, and I consider my kids Israeli kids now, they tend to just sort of figure stuff out on their own. Now, they don't always figure stuff out
how we want them to.
Correct.
But they're still trying on
They
their
are
own.
trying.
And I think as you're speaking, that really explains the success of the technology in Israel.
100%.
As you're speaking, I'm thinking, of course, I used to be in high tech. Well, this explains, you know, everything, the out of the box of thinking of things that no one's thought of the way of doing things, the problem solving in you know, out of the box ways. So definitely.
And this starts at a very, very young age.
Yeah.
Very young age. I tell the story that one of my children, they had an iPod when we lived in America, and they used to text me a lot from the iPod when they were at school, which annoyed me, especially when they texted me things like, Ima, my shoelace broke. And I'm like, oh, I guess she'll have to figure that out. And then it was like a series of like 8 or 9 messages about the broken shoelace. And I was like, come on, man. Like, deal with it.
Israeli kids would not.
Never. They would never text their mother about their broken shoelace. So I would say that ingenuity and their nimbleness and their ability to think outside of the box and to be better problem solvers, or just be willing to tackle the issue of problem solving.
And not scared to do so.
No, they're very confident.
Right.
And I think that's great for our kids also when they come here and they become Israeli. They adopt that confidence. Another great thing I think about living in Israel for Olim kids is that Israel is a very kid-centric society. You see kids everywhere. This is not a society where you can not be, what is it in America, seen but not heard or something like that. Right. Kids are at weddings. They're at shul.
The noise in shul, and that's okay.
Yes, from a young age, and nobody's like upset about it. And
right. Except for
yeah. Okay, but generally speaking, people are not upset about it.
Yeah.
Kids are just a bigger, more integral part of
they're not put to the side, and it's okay. And kids are meant to be kids, right? They're meant to play. They're meant to be heard. They're meant to have an opinion, and they definitely have opinions, and they are heard.
Right. So
I
think even though we're saying kids are more independent and they're more, apt to be problem solving from a younger age, on the other hand, I find that kids here are also, like, it's okay to be kids. Like, kids get dirty and they play outside a lot. I mean, yes, with technology, even, that's changing a little bit, but there's a lot of tiolim, hikes and outdoor trips with school and with their youth groups. And, there's just a lot of outdoor play. Kids get dirty and it's not a problem. No one gets upset about that.
Right. No,
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
Definitely.
Okay, for those of you who are Shomer Shabbat, which I assume if you came, via my blog is a decent percentage of you, I find that Shabbat in Israel for kids is amazing. Even if you're coming from a community where it's like a big Jewish community, it's amazing in Israel.
It's a special feeling.
And everyone wishes you Shabbat Shalom, and everyone wishes you, Chag Sameach, but it's just primitive, and that does something to a person's psyche for their life to be normal, and not all the time to be different. I think that's a really great thing for Olim kids. Okay, I have here. One is that, and I guess some of you may agree or disagree with my take on this. There's less emphasis on early academics in Israel, meaning that kids learn how to read in Kita Aleph, in first grade in Israel. They're not learning how to read in preschool. They're not learning how to read even in kindergarten. They get to Kita Aleph, and that's what they do in Kita Aleph. Now, the gap, which I don't think really that exists, but if this gap, it gets closed very quickly.
Right. What happens here in kindergarten, in Gan, Chovai, they learn the letters, and then they learn them again. They go over them again in Kita Aleph, whereas in the States,
they're reading by
they were reading by the end of time. They were reading in English and in Hebrew, right. Which it could be,
So some kids, it's right. Some kids are ready to start reading at 3, but a lot of kids are not ready to start reading until they're 7. And so then if they've spent 3 years in school before they're actually ready to start reading, then they are already frustrated by the time their skills catch up. So I think that's a good thing. I don't know, maybe you will think it's a good thing, maybe you won't think it's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. And the last thing on my list of what's great about Israel for Olim kids,
that was the point of really, you feel like you're part of something so much bigger. And I think the kids, the Olim, they get that right away. They might not be able to communicate in the first year 100%. They may not be able to understand everything in class, but I do think that they get a sense of being part of something that has such values, the living in Israel and a Jewish place, and having Yom HaTzmaut and Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaShoah, and really feeling it here. You feel it. The whole country stops, and everyone in every age, Ganim up until all ages. Yes, everyone feels it, and I think it's so powerful. And I think it adds something. That's the value of living here that I haven't felt anywhere else.
So, we were talking about this beforehand, she made that point, and I was like, yeah, that's excellent. That's definitely true. And I was thinking about it afterwards, and I realized I think it also does something to the psyche of our kids to be a part of something bigger than them. I think it is at both, like at once, like an awesome thing to be part of something bigger than you,
Absolutely.
but it's also humbling. Meaning
Yes.
that you realize that you are not all that. And if you have teenagers, maybe you can relate to what I'm talking about. Like, they think they're all that. And then you realize, like, I'm a part of a much bigger machine, and we're all valuable contributors to
Right.
that, you know, enterprise. And I think it humbles in a like really unique way.
I think it humbles, and on top of that, it just makes you value what we have so much more. My son, my 12th grader, that came back from Poland, to me, watching him at the Kotel after he landed, to me, it was really an appreciating living in Israel, being able to be in the Jewish land, seeing what had happened, and it was humbling. I think it was humbling. Yeah.
So I'm hoping that that by starting this way, that those of you that are, you know, thinking about this, you know, maybe we're going to make Aliyah, maybe we're not. I don't know. Maybe this will get some good feeling about it. So I want to ask before we move on to our next section. I have a little poll here. Let's see if I can make this work. Where are you in your Aliyah process? So are you official? You have a date, everything, you're set to go. Are you seriously considering it, but you're not quite ready to make Aliyah this summer? You know, you don't exactly have like a 4 to 6 month plan. Are you somebody who's always dreamed about Aliyah, but you're not really firmly thinking about it yet? And maybe you're already living in Israel. So I'd love to see. Take, you know, 10 or 15 seconds to answer the poll, and then I'll share with you all the results. It looks like we're pretty evenly split right now. Nobody's living in Israel yet, though. Because nobody's answered that they're living in Israel, except for us. Should I answer the poll? Skew the results. All right. It looks like we've got good percentage, 36% of you, 33% of you who are already, you have a date and everything, which is awesome.
Amazing. Amazing.
Okay. Ready? Okay, I'm going to end the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, so let's share the results so you guys can see. So there we go. We're official, we have a date and everything is 29%. We're seriously considering, but not ready exactly to make Aliyah this summer or anything. That's 24%. And we've always dreamed about Aliyah, but we're not making any firm plans yet, is 47%. So that's awesome. That is good to know where you guys are holding. Okay, we are going to move on to what is challenging about life in Israel, because, you know, if we talked about what's good about it, we should also talk about what is challenging about it
for our kids.
For our, right, for Olim kids. Hold on a second. It's not popping up. There we go. What's challenging about Israel for Olim kids? So I have a shorter list, but it is a list nonetheless. The
lists are good. Lists are good. So keep us safe.
List person. So first of all, I would say that it's here. So our voices are breaking up. So if you're hearing that voices are breaking up and the video is freezing, could you raise your hand to let me know? I'm wondering if it's something on our end. Deanie's also seeing that. Oh dear, everybody's seeing that. Shoot. It's an internet issue. Guys, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. Let me think. Let me see if I can put it on a different. Okay. All right. So some of you are seeing it. Yay! Someone's flight was approved this morning. I'm so excited. Okay.
Amazing.
So yeah, some of you are seeing this buffering and some of you are not. I'm sorry. We're going to just try to keep pushing through it, and we'll have the playback for you, and hopefully the playback will be okay if you're having trouble hearing it right now. So what is challenging about living in Israel for Olim kids? So just like you, children are going to have to acculturate to a whole new culture. And it's going to affect them in similar and in different ways than it affects you. You know, they're going to have to make all new friends, and they're going to have to do it in a different language, literally and metaphorically, right? Because even the children who speak English, even children who come from English-speaking homes, if they've been here for a long time and they were born here and they have older siblings, there's just a different cultural nuance to how people relate to each other, which your kids are going to have the opportunity to figure out. Okay, language. most kids, even if they've gone to Jewish day schools in America, do not come to Israel fluent in Hebrew.
100%. Very, very, very few kids come
fluent. A lot of them are good readers.
But they don't have the understanding.
Right.
That was my kids. They came and read, and the teachers couldn't understand that they could read everything, but they had no idea what they were saying. So definitely there's a gap in that, 100%.
So children, I think, of all ages, and especially younger ages, they say up to age 8 or 9, are like, they learn things much faster than we as adults do.
Right, they say, yeah.
That is good for them. But, it is still a challenge. And I was like, Lara, we had to be honest with them. Like, I have done a lot of reading about academic fluency because even though my kids are doing a great job at their conversational Hebrew, and they can play in Hebrew and they can have conversations, at the store and at the mall and at the movies and at the restaurants in Hebrew, they get Hebrew menus now instead of, reverting to the English menu. Academic fluency is another animal entirely. And from the research that I've done, they say it takes 3 to 5 years, these are like the linguistic experts, to obtain academic fluency. So what that means is that even if your kid seems, like they're, I was about to say mistader, even if it seems like your kids are finding, out there in their social life, it can still be a challenge for them in their classroom. And so that, I think, is one of the biggest challenges for Olim kids. And I think that there's this misnomer or this myth that, they'll be fluent by Hanukkah.
Right. So I guess that also depends on the age. It depends on what community they move to. If there's a community that has a smaller percentage of Anglos, and each child's different. Some kids pick up languages quicker.
Yes.
There's no one set of rules for everyone that's going to work out the same. Me and Mara did discuss this earlier, and I just feel like we as parents, it's our job to encourage them as much as we can. So things like going to the local library and getting books in English and in Hebrew. And I understand that everyone comes with a different level of Hebrew, but as much as we can, and yes, some of it is basic language, but it builds to get to the academics. And play with Israeli kids also. I think that that's something that's so important, because then it becomes more natural. You start thinking more in Hebrew.
You're doing the Israeli thing.
Oh, you're doing the Israeli thing.
No, that you're saying the Israeli kids. I have this hang up, you guys. I have this hang up because we live in the same community, and we live in a community where there are a lot of English speakers.
The Hebrew speakers and the English speakers.
And people say the Israelis and the Americans.
Right. Which is not Israelis and Americans.
I hear my children saying this, and I hear Hebrew-speaking children saying this.
Right.
And I always correct my kids, and I say, you're Israeli now, too.
Sure.
And you speak English at home, but you're Israeli. Because I don't think that this divide between like us and them is like particularly helpful.
I think stand corrected 100%.
I'm getting off my soapbox now.
No, I think you're right. And I think it makes the attitude as such. When we all think of ourselves as all Israeli, then it puts us, we're uniting for as compared to, or as opposed to saying English speakers and Israelis, and then it's really separating. So I agree with you. I think it's very smart. And I think it's important to think of it that way.
A second, I'm going to make our faces bigger. One sec. Okay, there we go. Okay, so in terms of that academic fluency piece, I think as Lara said, this affects you depending on how old your children are. If you are coming with older kids, I think this thing, and really by older, let's say 3rd, 4th, 5th grade and up. Right. Certainly, with middle school and high schoolers, it's something to keep in mind that the expectations that you had for your children educationally will need to change. And that doesn't mean that your children won't be successful, that they won't get good grades, that they won't learn a lot. I'm not talking about that, but whatever maybe even subconscious things that we as parents sort of envisioned for our kids educationally in school, it's going to be a little different. It's going to be a little different. And figuring out how to set those expectations with your kids and make that okay for them is one of the opportunities / challenges of making Aliyah with kids. So hold on one second. My children 8 and 5 are excellent in free school. Beyond this, any realistic tips for preparing them for the Hebrew transition?
If you can read with them at home, I think that that's a huge thing. If you can have them watch shows on YouTube.
YouTube has a lot of Hebrew dubbed yes. American children's programming that you can find.
That can help. Another also understand that the Ministry of Education here only gives X amount of hours of help and plan, and realize that the older your kids are when you come here, they'll probably need to have tutors, which is okay. Private tutors, that'll help them.
Right.
And that's, something to know.
Yeah, we have tutors, and I think that's, one of the ways that we try to ameliorate some of these challenges that, our kids have.
Right.
Okay, let's see what else is challenging. Oops.
The idea of the freedom.
Right. So another challenge is that kids have more freedom and more independence, which we said was a good thing. Sometimes it can also present challenges because if they're coming from a culture in a society where they're not used to that degree of freedom, it can take a while to ease into making good choices.
Right. And the thing is, the kids are not supervised as much. So it means that your children need to have the skills and the tools, we're just talking about this today, of how to deal with situations that arise. I think from my experience with my kids, when we lived in the States, and most times they were supervised. In school, they were supervised. And when they were out of school, they were supervised. And in Shabbat, they were supervised. There was no time when they were just at a park by themselves or walking down the street by themselves. That did not exist at all.
Right. So my 9th grader on Friday nights, and we live in a community where it's all religious. They close the gates to the community on Shabbat. There's no cars. There's no traffic. There's no in and out. So it is safer. But my 9th grader, and already starting from 7th and 8th grade, this is happening. They are out until midnight, 12:30, with their friends, just walking around, doing teenage things.
Right, and we as parents had to adjust to that because we were so used to a controlled environment,
yes,
to say the least.
I mean, last year, if they had a night activity, like with B'nai Akiva, they had walking groups.
You mean
in Cleveland?
Okay.
In Cleveland, right, when we lived in the States. And now...
Yeah, where I live,
now my 8-year-old, well, now she's 9, walks around by herself. There's not walking groups for her. So it is a little bit different than that. Okay, Deanie asked where I live, so I will tell you privately, but I'm not going to say it on this webinar because I'm a little bit paranoid. Yeah. Okay?
Agreed.
Do you understand? Sorry, but I'll tell you privately if you want to email me and ask me. Okay. So those are some of the things that we find, to be challenging for kids, and we want to sort of be realistic in setting those expectations. So I have another poll for you here, and let's see here. Oops, I've been sharing those results the whole time. I'm not so good with the polls. Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to share those results the whole time. Okay, another poll for you here, which is what is your, and this is probably more for the people who are already definitely planning to make Aliyah and have a more specific date and time and framework in mind, but if you have worries or concerns about your kid, what are those biggest concerns? And you have to choose only one. It wouldn't let me do multiple choice, but if you want to take a few seconds and look through the answers and tell us, sort of what are your biggest concerns, for your kids. And maybe we can help address those a little bit more in the next section. So I'll give you a couple more seconds to answer these. And I'm sorry there's not like another category. If you have another concern, you can just totally put it in the Q&A and we can address that in the Q&A.
Right.
Okay, I'll give you 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, let's share these results. Okay, so it looks like no one is worried they won't be able to learn Hebrew, which is excellent. Great. You guys are confident in your children's linguistic abilities. It looks like there's some concern about social issues, and I guess the happiness is probably even connected maybe to the social stuff. Right. And then there's a lot of concerns about school and resources and education, and I think that's valid because it really is a very different environment, and we're going to talk about that. So we're going to address those concerns. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing.
Yeah, there's not many similarities between the school system in the United States and Israel.
No, not very many similarities. It is, we'll talk about that, but yeah, it's very different. Okay, so now what we're gonna talk about is what is challenging about Israel for Olim parents.
Right. I think the number one issue, I remember this, when you're so stressed and you're planning and you're backing up, and it's be always positive and to show your kids to focus on a positive. And it's very hard when you yourself are maybe not second guessing, but thinking about things. And I think it is important to show your kids or to point out the great things that are going to be, the freedom you're going to have and living in Israel and how special it is. And really, you and your wife, you and your husband together to be sort of like a very strong front. And I think that reflects onto your kids. And then when they come, I think your positivity will be the beginning of their feelings for everything. Obviously, they're going to have their own challenges and they're going to have their own feelings, and you're making the decisions, and usually the children are not. The kids are, we make the decisions, and not many parents are asking their kids, what do they think, or they're asking what they think, but they're making the final decision. And I think, staying positive at all times, and okay, it's natural to have the concerns, but I wouldn't share so many of my concerns with my kids. Or again, it depends on the age and it depends on your kids' personalities. But really to try and point out the positive and how great it's going to be. The details, all the details that have to work out, the adults work them out. Do you agree? Do you think that makes sense?
No, I do. I think that kids pick up, on our vibe.
Oh, yes.
And just like, we may not like someone, we're not going to speak of them in front of our kids. It's, if you have a frustrating experience at the grocery store, which I'm going to tell you honestly, you're going to have a frustrating experience at the grocery store, you don't really want to dump that onto your kids.
Right. I agree with you.
Because they're having enough of their own stuff. So wait, I just want to, Paul asked, what about teens or older kids? So I want to say specifically, do you mean what are the challenges for them? Or did you have another question? So if it was, what are the challenges for them? I would say that it's the same thing that we said for all the other things. And then I would add that academically, high school, we'll talk about this more specifically vis-a-vis school, is going to be a challenge also because their language, no matter how good you think their Hebrew is.
I would recommend, if possible, it's always recommended to come on a pilot trip and to look at the different communities and the neighborhoods. But if you're coming with older kids, it's so important for them to look at the schools and to get an idea. I have several clients that were doing research from overseas, and they came with their teenagers, and what they thought the school was about and what it actually was were so different. And to see what kind of support there really is, and to get a sense of, is this the best, is this the best place for you? So I think it's important for everyone to come on a pilot trip, and for the older kids, it's so much more. And if it's possible to get the kids with you on the pilot trips and to look at the schools, you're making the biggest change in your life. I think it's so worth it. Do you agree that you really should?
If you can, yeah, I think that's a good way to involve them on that decision-making process.
Right. And then hopefully they start off in the right school and they're part of making that decision, which we talked about how important it is.
So I see that you're asking to talk more about younger kids and under age 5 in Ganim, and we will definitely talk Ganim when we get to the section on schools. So just hold tight for a couple more minutes.
And then she mentions the doctor appointment system.
Let's hold off on that also.
You can send me an email and I can answer your specific questions. Right. I don't know if I manage this time to talk about the doctor's appointments, but we can definitely, you can ask me.
But there is nationalized medicine here. Everyone has health insurance.
Right.
And Lara can go into the details of that, especially if you're coming with a kid with medical needs, or that you would want to make sure that you can get that squared away as much as possible
before you get here.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, so other things that I would say are challenging for us as parents, that at the same time it is the most gratifying thing that you can do, and it is also the most guilt-producing thing that you can do, because when you see your kids struggle, you think,
did I make the right decision?
Right.
And also many of us don't just have one child, so maybe it's great for one child and maybe a little bit harder for somebody else. When we got here, my second son was in a class with no English speakers, and the teacher just had no idea how to help him. He couldn't understand him. It was so challenging. I just remember, it's heartbreaking.
And keep in mind that this is a boy who grew up with Hebrew in his home because his father is Israeli.
Right, but he always had, language was always difficult for him. Yes, but his father.
Which is why I want to point out to you that it is okay.
To what?
That is going to, that the language will be a challenge for your kids in the beginning.
It
and
is
I want you to know that and not be shocked or disappointed or, you know, we'll talk about academic expectations in a second. I'm sorry I cut you off, but it's like I said to my kids at the beginning of the year, the only things I want from you are to make some friends and to learn some Hebrew.
Right. Well, you were smarter than me because when I got here, I was all into, oh, my kids should do well in school until someone said to me, maybe it was a little tongue teacher, she said, your kids need to be happy. That's what they need to be. And she was 100% right.
Yeah, so I mean, my kids can't always understand the problems on the test, so it's hard for them to do well.
That's really understandable.
And I'm not trying to scare you by saying these things. I want you to understand that, like, this is okay. And this is part of the natural process of moving to a new country where they don't speak the language that you are used to speaking. Okay, another thing that I just want to point out also is that if you have more than one child, and if you have children that are at different ages and stages, that, and this is true no matter where you live, by the way. I just think maybe it's more heightened or more pronounced here in Israel, you know, away from things that are familiar. I think that it is very likely that some of your children will do better or have an easier adjustment than others. And you may start to second guess your decisions and think, well, maybe I should have done this, but then I would have compromised the other kids. So I think one of the challenges for me, especially as a parent, is knowing that, you know, two-thirds of them may be doing great, but 1/3 is maybe having time. And if I made decisions that would be better for the other third, then it would be worse for the other two. You know, so that's something that I've struggled with. And again, I think that's probably accurate even in the States, but I feel that it's more pronounced here.
Right. Before we moved here, my 3 older kids, each one of them, they were in a school together, and they all dealt with it differently, and it was more successful for some of them and not for all of them. It's the same situation. Just suddenly you're moving, you're making a change, and so then you're looking at things differently. But yeah, definitely, I think each child is going to have a very different.
Okay, so we've got a couple more points in this section. We'll take a break because we got a lot of questions and try to address some of these. So I have one person who's asking about you know, coming with a teenager who has probably an IEP, who's classified for getting some special support services. So although we don't have the time really to go in detail, there are in Israel all of the resources and systems that you need.
Yes.
And the challenge to you as a parent, and by the way, if you have a child with special needs, I have seen this in my friends who are special need parents, they spend a lot of their time advocating for their kid in America. And they are warriors at it. And so when you come to Israel, one of the challenges is figuring out how to advocate, effectively do that. And that is one of the things that this lady here can help you with.
It depends on where you're living and the municipality, and reaching out to the people. In many of the neighborhoods, there are people that are in charge of special needs, and I help you connect with them and then see what needs to be done. And it is about advocating all the time. It doesn't stop. There are systems, and you know, I can go personally one by one if you want to email me and ask specific questions, we can discuss that. I think it's, you know, more of in a specific forum, because as I say, each municipality has their own rules. There is a system in place, as Mar says. It's like
it exists. You have to know how to unlock the door.
Yes, you do. And there are key people that can help you do that.
Key, unlock, you see how we're like. Okay.
I saw here something from Naomi.
Yeah, family. And wait, let's do this one here. Specifically, do they have to bring documentation about your child's school grade? So I was told to bring report cards.
Yes, bring your report cards, but basically they will ask you in the school you're going to what your child's birth date is and
what grade they were in. Actually, because it is different. Right. We'll get into this more when we talk about schools, but the cutoff here is different. It's Hanukkah to Hanukkah, as opposed to like most places in the States, I think, except for maybe New York, or September, or the end of August, or the end of September, whatever it is. So the cutoff is a little bit different. So like I have a child whose birthday is in October, but I didn't put him up a grade. I kept him in the grade that he had just finished in America. So he had finished 5th and he went into 6th.
Right.
I didn't skip 6th for him, even though he was old enough to be in 7th. I figured he's coming academically the first year anyway. Why make him lose, 2 years off the bat? And it's been fine. There's other older kids. It's not like your kid will be the only one if they're a fall birthday.
So you can bring a report card. There are some schools that ask for it, but many schools, they just ask for birth dates and your Teudat Zehut, and that's how you, and that's how they place you.
Okay, so and that's if you're coming in with kids who have not yet been in school. Like if you're coming with younger kids, like pre-K or kindergarten.
School also.
Well, they're not going to skip a grade, I don't think.
No, they won't skip a grade. I'm saying.
Oh, they ask what grade you were in.
Right.
Not what. Okay,
right.
Fine. Sorry.
Right.
Sorry.
Right. No, and then you can talk about if you want. Let's say your child is border, the December 30th. So you can speak to the school and decide, what makes the most sense to
right. Right. I have friends who actually had their child repeat a grade because they were on the border, and again, they figured they're not going to get so much academically out of this first year anyway.
Right. Right.
Okay, no problem, Beth. I will send you the recording as soon as we're done. Okay, so we got some questions about being away from family and how that affects the kids, and it's so interesting because Sundays. Yeah, Sundays. Okay, let's talk first about the family thing. So the question is more like the emotional side as opposed to the help side. I will say, because you guys know that I lived in Israel before when my children were very little, and then we moved back to the States when they were 5 and 2.5. And the family issue was a big factor for me. It was very painful for me. And also we didn't have help. We were really on our own here. And my husband did a lot of reserve duty, a lot, like 2 months a year, 6 weeks at least. And I felt like it was really difficult for me to be on my own and worried about him and dealing with the kids by myself and trying to navigate, even though I had lived in Israel at that point for like 6 or 7 years. Each age and stage of your kids is like a new acclimation that you have to get used to. I really felt that I was missing family. Now I feel like we still miss our family, but I don't need them in the same like day-to-day grunt labor. I need help right now leaving my kids because I can't do this way.
I think also what happens, it definitely is so difficult. I remember that 6 months before we came back with our kids, I couldn't breathe. Leaving my family was so difficult. Leaving my parents, my brothers, it was so emotional. I think what does happen is you hopefully you move into a neighborhood and you make friends that become like your family. You make very, very close friends who, many of them are in the same situation, but they don't have family here. So Shabbatot and Chagim you spend together. You do Tiyulim together and they become your family. And then those of us that are lucky that their family ends up following them and making Aliyah, that makes the experience just that much more incredible. But I do think that there is a sense of community in many, many places in Israel. When I came here as a child from South Africa, so when we lived in Rehovot, I think we had a community of neighbors, our Israeli neighbors. We would spend Chagim with them and we would go places with them.
Hold on 1 second. I wanna keep moving us along because otherwise we're not gonna finish. We have so much to talk about. Okay, let's see here. My
10 minutes.
What?
Okay,
we gotta talk faster.
Okay, we're gonna.
Okay, what's the best age for kids to make Aliyah? So I want to ask, first of all, I've got another poll. How old are your children? Let's figure this out. Hold on 1 second. Okay, how old are your kids? So go ahead and answer this. How old are your kids? We'll see more young, more old ones, a little bit of everything. And this is multiple choice, meaning you can answer more than once.
Oh, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to give you guys 5 more seconds. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, let's see what we got. Share the results. Okay, well, it looks like we have a couple on, it looks like most kids like skew a little bit older in this group today. Yeah. That's good to know. Those are actually the ages. I mean, my kids were 8, 12, and 14 when we came back. So
mine were 8, 6, 10, 8, 6, and 3.
And then one was born here. Okay, so you may be wondering, since you guys have, kids sort of all over the map in terms of their ages, what is the best age to have children make Aliyah? I tell you that I think it is a little bit of a misnomer that there's a best age.
Right.
And Lara is going to disagree with me.
No. I don't think there's a right answer and a wrong answer here. You know, in my mind, when we were making Aliyah, I wanted to come when my kids were younger. In my mind, you know, age 10, getting into 5th grade, so they still had 2 more years in elementary school, that made sense to me. But there is no wrong or right answer. Everyone has a different circumstances.
So everybody always told me, come as young as possible, which makes sense in theory. Totally makes sense in theory. And then we actually were going to come back before, and then we didn't come back. And someone was asking me about more friendly to single moms. Let's talk about that in a second too, okay? And I ended up coming with a 14-year-old, which I said I would never do. I guess that's what parenting is, doing all the things you said you would never do. Anyway, so, and you know, so the reason I now think it may be a misnomer that you have to come when they're young is because
it's not that you have to. We're not saying here
that it's better to. Is because my youngest one is the one who has struggled the most. And my preteen and teenager, I don't want to say seamless, but almost seamless transitions.
So why do you think that is?
So I think that the bigger of when is the best age is that, you know, this is a part of a bigger microcosm of your family. And, you know, your family is made up of individuals and individual personalities, and then those individual personalities have to interact with their environment. It's all a lot of complicating factors. Yes, obviously, all things being equal, probably coming when they're a little younger is easier on them, right? It's easier to learn the language. They have more time to adjust.
It's less of a gap academically, I think.
Yes.
Also, you know, from what we read and what we hear, the younger you come, the more you are a sponge to the language and maybe to the culture, because your personality isn't already, you're not already
formed.
Right, exactly. You're still forming. That being said, we see many teenagers that come here, and there's a lot more of a support for them today. There's even things like NCSY out there and Crossroads, and
there are programs that are designed to help teenagers who come, you know, at that older age.
Right.
So Deborah's asking me if my older ones are boys or girls. My older ones are boys. My younger one is a girl. In terms of moving with a teenage girl, I mean, you're
not there yet. I have a teenage girl. It's a roller coaster, no matter what you're doing.
But I've really come to believe something different than I would have told you 9 months ago, was that it really depends on the individual child.
100%.
And that you cannot say, don't come with a child that age, or come with a child that age, or she'll be fine, or she won't be fine. Like, I'm not really answering your question.
One of my clients is coming here with a 13-year-old, and the daughter is so excited to move here. It really depends. You're right. There is no one answer that's, you know, what's the age or what's the best. I think it's also about, depending on the age, is how to prepare them.
Oh, so let's move on to the next thing, which is, how do you talk to your kids about Aliyah? Okay.
And when to talk to them about Aliyah.
And when do you talk to them about Aliyah? So, okay, listen. Again, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think that you have to know your child, and you have to know what they're capable of and what's going to be helpful for them and what's going to be stressful for them. I'm going to tell you very quickly what we did, and then Lara can talk about what they did and what she thinks is best based on our professional experience. We made a decision late in the game. We didn't decide until July that we were coming back, and we came back in August. So like 6.5 weeks after we decided, we came back. That's crazy. I don't recommend doing that. But we did it. And
we were
here.
Planned.
I mean, we were planned once we decided, but we didn't. Anyway, I said to my husband, I feel that we need to give our oldest child, who had just turned 14, I think we need to give him veto rights. I know that is not, you know, what a lot of people do, but I felt that he was old enough that I needed to sort of like respect his agency.
I think that's amazing.
And his autonomy. And we gave him veto rights. And he said something which is very pragmatic, something like, well, the first year is probably going to suck. Excuse my language. The first year is probably going to suck because I, you know, have to learn the Hebrew and the friends. And, but after that, I guess it'll probably be okay. So, all right. That was his response. So I was like, rousing vote of support for the decision.
Well, yeah.
Our 12-year-old, I wouldn't say we gave him total veto rights, but we discussed it with him before making a final decision. And our 8-year-old, we told. And interestingly enough, again, it is our 8-year-old who has struggled the most this year. And I think suffered the most from this sense of not having agency and of having choices made for her as opposed to her own choices. And that could just be her personality. I don't know. But if possible, I think that, making Aliyah, and it's just such a huge change. And whether you make the decision and then tell your kids or you involve them in the decision, a lot of that is going to be your own family dynamics and what you think your child is capable of. And, are they going to be caught off guard? Like, Aliyah, what? Like, I've never heard you talk about Israel before. Or is it something that's sort of always been in the works and it just was a matter of when? I mean, all these things are going to influence your kid. But generally speaking, there will be a sense of loss of control for us and for them. So as much as you can to find areas where they can exert, control in a healthy way. Like, we told our parents, my husband and I told our parents, the rabbi of our community, and 1 or 2 very close friends. And then we let our kids make it up. And they decided how they wanted to tell their friends and who they wanted to tell in what order and who they wanted to tell from shul and school and everything. And that was up to them.
That gave them a sense of being in control of something.
A little bit, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what we did.
So for us, it was different. We decided 6 months before we made Aliyah. And
more normal.
And our kids, no, it just so happened. And our kids were younger. So our oldest was 10. I think it's very important to give as much information as possible. If possible, to bring your kids here and to show them what it's all about and to look together with them at neighborhoods and show them what the schools are like and talk to them about open communication is so important. Kids can get very angry. I remember when I was a child and we left Israel and went to America, I was so upset. It was heartbreaking for me. And I remember we lived in Rehovot, and actually I had the time to say goodbye. So I said goodbye to my friends, and they had a party for me. And then I went to Machon Weizmann, to the Weizmann Institute, which is where we hung out all the time. And we took our dog and we went to our favorite spot. And it's all part of a process that I think is important to let the kids go through. Sometimes we're a little bit scared of, let's shelter our kids. Let's not tell them yet because it's too scary for them. Well, the change is going to be a challenge whether you tell them or not. So I really do believe in information is power, and it makes your kids empowered to feel like they know where they're going to and to understand things. And I think if you excite them about it, I mean, obviously they're still going to be terrified. I'd lived on 3 continents by the age of 10, so I know all about moving around, and it's scary. But if you tell them what they're going towards, and if you explain to them that there will be support, that there will be other kids that have made Aliyah, that whether they know people there or family there, or how great it's going to be to go to the beach there, or we, for example, our 2 oldest are boys, and they were crazy baseball players. So we only looked in neighborhoods that they had baseball teams. They did not play baseball after a year or 2. Now they're totally Israeli, soccer, soccer and basketball. But that was something that we looked for when we came. But I do believe in giving the kids information, and I agree with Mara. If there's any sort of way that you can have them feel like they are in control of something, because that feeling of taking the decision away from you, especially with older kids, especially with teenagers, that can really that can make kids angry. And I think just saying, let's talk about.
But
things.
Also younger kids.
You're right. 100%. No, you're right. Everything I'm saying here is, there's no rules for everyone across the board, and everyone, and it depends on their personalities. And maybe if you know that you have a child that doesn't deal with change so well, so maybe you don't tell them 6 months ahead of time, but you do give them time. But maybe 3 months ahead of time, is that so enough? You gauge. We all know our own kids and how they deal with change and how they deal with the.
That's it. I just want to. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So she said we all know our own kids, which is true, right? I mean, we all know our own kids, but I would just say, prepare for your children to surprise you. Gam, the tov, like for the good and for the bad, because not the bad, but not for the good.
Some things might go smoother, and some things that you didn't realize would be a challenge come up as be a challenge.
My middle one, I would say, he struggles more with transitions than the other 2. And when he was 5, we were living in an apartment, and then we bought a house, and so we moved here. It was a dump into this lovely house, and he was acting out for the longest time, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. And then we found out he was mourning the apartment. Wow. And my husband and I are like, that disgusting dump? Why are you morning in the apartment. But so I say that to illustrate that he is a kid who sort of holds on to, stuff.
It's his comfort.
That's
his
it.
comfort.
That's it. So we came to Israel, and I thought that he would be the one who emotionally would sort of hold on to that stuff. He is like dived in. Is that the right way to? He dove in. He dove in head first and has barely come up for air in a good way since we got here. On Yom Ha'atzmaut, where we live, there was like a street party for Independence Day, and there was music, and there were stands, and there was like food, and like those boppy things, and spray.
And my daughter was spraying.
And at 11:30, I said, I'm going home, and my 12-year-old said, I'm going to stay with my friends, and I said, okay, be home by 12:15, which was pretty late curfew for a 12-year-old, if you ask me. And he walked in at 12:14 because he is a good boy, and he said, Ima, I live here. I am so happy that you moved us here. And I just thought, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. So
I think Yom Ha'atzmaut is that time, that week of Yom HaZikaron and Yom Ha'atzmaut.
It's very special.
That's when you really feel like you're part of something.
But I want you to know that, yes, there is a mourning process that goes with moving. Even if you're going toward a good thing, there is a mourning process. There's a huge transition, and it is not linear. It is not like you start at point 1 and by the end of the year you're at point 20 and you tick along at the points along the way. It is like a crazy roller coaster ride.
All over. And each child and each of us is going to have a different roller coaster ride.
But there are going to be moments in the year where your 12-year-old mourned that dumpy apartment is going to turn to you and say, Ima, I love it here. I am so glad you moved us here. And you're going to know that you're going to be okay. So, okay, I hate to do this, but we have been talking now, and we didn't even get to this question. Okay, we've been talking now for over an hour, and we haven't even gotten to school yet. So here's what I want to suggest. By a show of hands, how many of you would be interested, or you can leave a comment, I can't see the hands for some reason, how many of you would be interested in another webinar about schools? So, okay. Oh, look. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this outline that we have for schools. I'm sorry, we talk too much. And we're going to set up another webinar in like maybe 2-ish weeks, if that sounds okay. And we're going to send you the invitation. And I'm probably not even going to open up to my whole list. Yeah.
Meredith, I saw your question here back coming. Is this, Mom, please email me and I'll be happy to talk to you about this. And
okay, and on the screen right now, you can see Lara's email address. This is their website, olimadvisors.com/KOAB, and you go there and it's like a special page set up for those of you who came to this webinar. You can see there's a way to contact you. You can also contact me. I'm not an expert, but I'd be happy to be your buddy if you're coming. And
I'm happy to answer any questions you have. You can email me any question that you have. A pleasure.
And we will set up another email about schools, and we'll cover everything from Ganim through Bagriyot. Ganim are the preschool system here, and Bagriyot are the high school examinations. We can even talk about college if you want, because we'll have another hour to do it. Don't look at me like that. We can talk about college.
Sure we can.
Frankly, my husband went to college here. He's an expert.
I know. We went to college together.
I know. We can totally talk about college. All right, maybe we won't talk about college. But anyway, we'll even talk about the Army.
I was going to say the Army process.
That's a big part of high school is,
yes.
Ready for the Army. We're going to do that in part 2, but for now, I want to let you guys go and enjoy your
Memorial Day.
Which, by the way, okay, you guys are on day 4 of weekend, right? Okay? We have one weekend. I mean, really, one day of weekend.
Right, someone asked about Sunday.
It's a sad thing, the Sunday thing.
We make Friday our Sunday.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
I do.
Okay, she does. I don't.
I got married here, so that was just what it was.
So I will tell you that I'm going to finish this and then we're going to get off. We told our kids when we moved here, learn Hebrew and make friends. Learn some Hebrew and make some friends. And then we also told them they can have a day off.
I was going to say a personal
and
day. We all need it.
And some of them take more than a day. And a lot of them have chosen for it to be Sunday because then it feels like a Sunday to them.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. We miss Sundays. It's true. But
you get used to it.
You get stuff.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you guys so much.